like to call this meeting to order of the Architectural Review and Planning Board on Thursday, the 15th of November 2018. Rita, could we have the roll call, please?
Mr. Doherty?
Present.
Mr. Roche?
Present.
Mrs. Smith? Present. Let the record show that Staff Attorney Nazaro and Town Manager Dunham and myself are also present. Absent with notice is Thomas Smith, who's the chairman, and Amanda Jones and Caroline Delafield.
Thank you, Rita. I'd like a review of the minutes of the last meeting. Any amendments or additions before we make a recommendation, motion to approve?
I make a motion that it be approved.
Second?
Mr. Doherty?
Yes.
Mr. Roach?
Yes.
Mrs. Smith? Yes. Vice Chair Murphy?
Yes. Further, I'd like to see if there are any additions, withdrawals, deferrals, arrangement of agenda items.
We have none.
None. Okay. Meeting dates forthcoming. We have December, January, February, March, April in our immediate horizon. Anyone not available? Okay. I can't make the 24th of January. Anything else? Okay. Thank you. We now move on to the public hearing section of our meeting. Any ex parte communication prior to this meeting? No. Thank you. Rita, could you administer the oath to everybody who would like to speak at this public meeting?
Anybody who thinks they might speak, please stand. Raise your right hand. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth. So help you God. And everybody leave a card at the end if I don't know you.
You will be contacted. Right. We now move on to the first application. That is submitted by Ken White of Vintage Building Limited Liability Company over a property located at 3423 Oleander Way, Gulfstream, Florida 33483, legally described as Lot 49 of replat or part of Gulfstream Properties number 2.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, I'm Ken Whites. I'm representing the owner of the property, and the owner would like to tear down the existing residence there. That's kind of in bad shape, and I believe the town has issued some notification to tear that down or fix it up. The owners would like to take it down as soon as possible, as soon as we get a permit. And they would also like to simply landscape the property. That's it. No structures, just landscaping. The plan is here for the landscaping. The idea is just basically to continue what's the existing, I'll let Dan Carter describe it, but we're going to continue what's currently on Oleander on the corner and continue that down the street.
Dan Carter, landscape architect. If the board has any questions, the material on Oleander is dwarf schefflera and then a backdrop of the larger 6 to 8 foot clusia with coconuts and a banyan.
Right. At what level would the new barrier, the new border to the street be going in at? What height?
At what height?
Yeah.
Minimum 6 foot. Probably more like 8 foot.
Will it be sodded?
Yes, the right of way would be sodded.
Right away.
Planting from property line back would be level. We'd have a 4 foot level along the street edge, along the front property line of Oleander, and then a 6 to 8 foot clusia behind that, coconuts interspersed in that.
And so the lot will just remain dirt.
It will be sodded,
100% good.
100% sodded, irrigated.
Irrigated.
Yep.
Okay, that's very good.
Well, the irrigation plan is behind this.
I have a question. I live directly across the street on 3430 Oleander Way. And we're the only house that faces fully underway in that block. And I have a genuine concern about the street being treated like an alleyway. It looks like that now. And, so I'm happy to hear about the height of the hedge going in. Is there a plan to remove the septic and the propane tank? on the
Yes,
property?
we'll remove all
And
the
demo?
structures on the property, yes.
Okay.
Does that address your concern?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Pretty straightforward plan in terms of what was presented.
No other neighbors came
I'm
up.
very glad you came because
Yeah.
I drove over there and looked exactly at your front door and thought, I wonder if this lady is well aware of what's going on.
Oh, I am. I am, and will continue to.
You know Dan personally now, right?
Yeah.
We've known
Quite
each
some
other
time,
a
quite
long
some
time.
time.
Okay. If there's no further questions, I'd like to ask for a motion.
Yep, I'll be happy to make that motion. I'll make a motion to recommend approval of a demolition permit.
Second?
Mr. Doherty?
Yes.
Mr. Roach?
Yes.
Mrs. Smith? Yes. Vice Chair Murphy?
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion to recommend approval of a land clearing permit.
Second?
Mr. Doherty?
Yes.
Mr. Roach?
Yes.
Mrs. Smith? Yes. Vice Chair Murphy?
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion to recommend approval of a level 3 architectural site plan to re-landscape and irrigate the entire lot.
Second?
Mr. Doherty?
Yes.
Mr. Roach?
Yes.
Mrs. Smith? Yes. Vice Chair Murphy?
Yes. Thank you, Jeffrey.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
You may
Still
leave
smiling.
those.
Yeah, it's always a good thing.
Thank you.
Well, you've got another meeting. But you can take it with you if you want, or you can leave it here.
Possible I could steal a chair from here and put it.
Absolutely.
All right.
I appreciate it. You're so bright.
I think they would probably put here before even I was
Oh, I'm
born.
sure.
Well, he's,
I'd like to move on to the second application, will you please? While you prepare yourself for the record, this application is submitted by Randall Stock Architects as agent for Scott and Beta Holloway, owners of property located at 1535 North Ocean Boulevard, Gulfstream, Florida 33483, legally described as a portion of the north 100 feet of the south 160 feet of Government Lot 1, Section 10, Township 46 South, Range 43 East, Palm Beach County, Florida, lying easterly right-of-way lying on Ocean Boulevard. And also, while you're prepping, just for the record, we do have two additional documents to have to receive. Just bring it to the board for example.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Happy early Thanksgiving to you all. I'm here on behalf of Beata Galloway, 1535 North Ocean. I represent Randall Stock Architects, and with me is Tony Grimaldi, Landscape Architect. And today we want to bring to you a,
Can you just state your name for the record?
oh yes, Freddie Kalani with Randall Soft Architects. Today we want to clarify a few of the items on the previous submittal, which included an open staircase over the approved addition. And we want to start off with the clarifications on the landscape, which Mr. Grimaldi would run us through on the home.
Certainly. Good morning. My name is Tony Grimaldi, Landscape Architecture. And I'll just organize the way we've done things here. The sheet to the left here is sheet number 1, and the sheet to the right would be sheet number 2. Sheet number 1 represents where we come in the property. The modifications we've made since the previous submittal are as follows. I'd like to step over to the plan. There have been no changes in the front yard area here. We have added a wall with respect to landscape. There's been no changes. We do have a wall. We're adding a wall down the side over here. In conjunction with that, as you come into the property, we've kept the driveway alignment the same. We've incorporated a flower garden in this area. As you come down the drive, we've incorporated another flower garden in this area. As per this garden here, we would have to remove a large tree to accommodate that. We've indicated that. We would install a hedge along the wall in the front. That hedge would be 6 feet, and along the southern boundary, the hedge would be 8 feet tall, and we've proposed to put a carpus hedge for that. As we move into the property, we come to the motor court area, and what we decided to do, previously there were some Sylvester palms here, and it created this real formal lay entry, and we decided to work a little bit more with the existing character that was there, so we set up a garden follies as you come in, and then as we come into the driveway, we set it up a little bit more formally. We have our formal Sylvester palms here. You come into the driveway, this is the gravel here, and we worked really hard at the sense of entry as you come into the home. We have the garage here, we have our stairwell here. We wanted to be able to have the guests park here, the owners would pull in here. We created a bosque of triple palms in this area, and we also incorporated some triple palms here. We we proposed to espaliate bougainvillea on the wall, so you'd park, you'd come in, you'd have palms on this side and palms on this side. You'd look at the bougainvillea. It's oriented towards the south, which is perfect. It should bloom perfectly. It should be a wonderful entrance as you come into this little courtyard area here. And as we come into the courtyard area, we carried that theme of the palms in the corners, opened up the courtyard. We have a nice fountain in here. We have a large existing sea grape here that already softens the corner of the building with some nice planting, layered planting in the front, and we incorporated a low little wall here again to give it more of a garden-esque feel as we came in. So we were very aware of this area. As we made no changes to the north side, other than the fact that we had previously, when the previous landscape plan was in, there were some additional coconuts back in this area, but when you look at the property between what the neighbor has and what we've proposed and what's there, I really don't even see how you get those coconuts in there, and we have a lot of privacy already. So I did want to bring it to your attention that those coconuts that were previously indicated there are not there. We've indicated that we want to be able to trim this back here, the existing sea grapes, so we could have a better view out of the ocean. And down the side, the planting remained all the same, except for the fact that we made the same move with the coconuts that were previously indicated here. We took them out over here too, because if you walk the property, this is very thick over here. We're already indicating additional planting, and those coconuts really wouldn't work there, so we looked at that closer and took those out. We made a couple of adjustments. We have 2 existing coconuts that are on the property. We're proposing to relocate those on each side of the pool, so we have a really nice axis when you look out the back when they're lit up there, the way this back area has been set up. This is all lawn area in the back. We have a retaining wall that helps us make a transition down to the beach area. From the previous plan, we've incorporated stepping stones with some synthetic turf indicated between them, just to, because that was the style of the home and the architecture, and so that's what we came up with for this area. And I think that gives a pretty good explanation of it.
Please go ahead. Can you just-
Well, the photocarpus hedges. Yes, the photocarpus hedge in the front, we propose 6 foot. The photocarpus hedge that would be on the side would be 8 foot. So any hedging that would adjacent the neighbors on the south side, it's our intent that that would be 8 feet due to the fact that we're putting in a new wall and we'd like to go ahead and screen that.
And what was the large tree that had to be removed, or you were saying
It was an existing oak tree. It had a 48-inch caliber oak tree.
Thank you. Any more questions on the landscaping section? No, none yet. What we're doing is, we're going through the sections one by one. So, are there any questions about the landscaping proposals we've been presented? No. Okay. Thanks. Can we move on?
Let's get these done.
And I would like to point out, we have renderings with us, and we try to incorporate all the species and the proposed changes in the landscape into the new renderings. So I think when we get to the section where we present the renderings, you can actually see what it is supposed to look like. Yeah.
Get a feel.
Yeah.
Let me step away from the microphone also. So for the previous submittal that was denied on the exterior staircase, there was a flat parapet, or is a parapet that went up the staircase, and it was our understanding that it was just too plain and didn't really have any architectural features. So we studied the front elevation a little further, and we're carrying the railing feature down the side, as you can see in the courtyard. So that it creates a nice theme of the architecture that has been approved previously onto the side, and also complementing the landscape architecture per Mr. Grimaldi, running down the side facade here. And if you take a look at here's another view of the courtyard, it adds a nice transition not only to the entrance to the breezeway, which we are now enclosing, and up to the guest suite. Any questions?
Yeah, just if you go through the whole presentation of all the points, the
Okay.
colours, etc.
Okay, no problem.
Thanks.
What we are going to be doing too, and I'll pull this up here, I believe it's on the other side of this. On one of our previous submittals, we had been approved for trellis over at the master bedroom, and we want to carry that same thing along the outdoor living space here. And we find that it fits, it's going to be the same architectural style, the colors and materials, so there should be no issue with further screening. That's open to the top, so it's not going to add any additional lot coverage for the structure. Let's see what else we got. Now the roof, we've got some samples here. The existing roof is a white concrete tile, And since we are turning this into a Mediterranean, we are proposing a flat terracotta style roof tile, which we provided some samples here for you guys to see. And we feel that with the adjacent homes that do have the Spanish tile, we are keeping the same flat tile, but we just want to modernize it a bit and introducing the flat tile. So here are the two samples if you guys want to take a look at that. And this is more on the landscape portion, which Tony covered. You know, he spoke about the retaining wall at the rear, which is going to help over. Also, the construction of the new dune walkover, which we have been given a field permit from DEP going forward, and that has been provided to the county. And with that is our presentation for the revisions.
Right. Thank you. Questions from the board?
I have a question. So I remember last time we were looking straight to the front door, that our view was kind of obscured halfway by the staircase. Is that still the case? I know you won't see the staircase, but is it still?
Yes, it's in the same location, but what you'll find is once we remove the parapet wall there, and just kept it the railing, it really just it cleans up your view. Yes.
And that was kind of my intent when I was working with the Stock Architects, is that we wanted to make the entryway and the courtyard as presentable and as pretty as possible. And with the prior structure, you really blocked the door, and it left a very narrow stairway. So granted, the stairs are still there, but with it having a larger proportion of a railing, it's a little bit more that Palm Beach courtyard look, and it opens up that view to the courtyard in the front of the house.
And the attention you paid to the railing, because I know that was something that's...
Yes, correct. We're matching what we're doing in the front.
Right, okay, so I remember that came into the meeting.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any more questions before I open to the floor, gentlemen? Can I just, for the matters of the meeting, we received a correspondence from Sachs Kaplan, attorneys at law, who are representing Mr. Leslie Alexander of Joyville Trust, who's the occupant and owner of 1511 North Ocean Boulevard, a neighbouring property to the property we were considering here. And Michael Weiner has requested an opportunity to speak at this meeting. So I open it up to the floor at this point, and including Mr. Weiner, if you're here.
Board, Chairman, thank you very much. Let me give you some material. I believe there's 5 of them there. The material, for the most part, just presents pictures of the Alexander House, the ordinances, and the staff application. We'll run through this quickly for you. But we are an aggrieved and affected party, and I do point out that while I understand that you've seen this on a number of occasions, this does present a new application. That's how it's described by the staff. So under those circumstances, you are approving everything here today. The record, Michael Weiner with the business address of 6111 Broken Sound Parkway, Boca Raton, Florida. I'm here on behalf of Mr. Leslie Alexander and the Joyville Trust. They're the owner of the property located at 1511 North Ocean Boulevard in Gulfstream. The house is located immediately to the south of the subject property, which has an address of 1535 North Ocean Boulevard. Mr. and Mrs. Galloway, the owners of the neighboring house, have made an application for remodeling of their home that includes a level 2 review under your local zoning code. I have presented each of you with a booklet relevant to the application, and we'd like to take a moment to explain what Mr. and Mrs. Galloway have requested and the impact on the Alexander House. So if you open up to the first tab, there's a report, an application, and the relative position of the homes. So if you take a look, that's their application, their original application, where they're switching the architectural style, you'll note. If you move on, that's your staff report. Importantly, with the staff report, take a look at the fact that the gross lot size and the effective lot size are the same. It's truly important. I'll link up in just a moment, but just take a look at your report. And then if you turn to the third part, you can see the relative position of the homes. And you can see that over the years, there's a rather lush and dense border that has grown up between the two homes. Now you'll notice in the report that there's actually 6 items that they have to meet that are mentioned under the code. And remember, the burden of proof on these matters is on the applicant, and we're sure that you're going to consider each and every one of your code provisions. Turning to the next application, or the next tab, you'll notice some photographs of that landscaping in between the homes. This was difficult to take. There's a chain link fence that runs down the middle of it. You know, obviously the chain link fence is surrounded by growth and landscaping, but first couple of pictures, we wanted to show you that it exists, where it is. And then if you turn to the next tab, this is the view from our windows of the house. So you can really see how lush that landscape is right now and how it gives a sense of privacy. If you turn to the third tab, you'll find the required measurements. Notice that lot size is there again. And notice there's an FAR calculation. We'll get into that in a bit. If you turn to the next item, you'll find the survey. And in looking at the survey, please note along the southern border, I tried to blow these up as much as possible, but the important point is the fence starts on the Alexander property, and then it meanders over onto the Galloway property to the east. It's not exactly on the border. And we'll look at the plans for a moment, but the fence is where the fence is. And then last, with respect to the survey, take a look at that box the surveyor did. It's a rectangular box on the east. And it shows the old coastal construction line. You with me? And that rectangular box is about 26.5 feet by 100. And we'll get to that in a moment when we look at your ordinances. At the next tab, you'll find the wall that's going to be on the south side. And while it's nice that it shows the fence being perpendicular to that wall, we all know that's not the case. The surveyor shows it in a different location. So we know that something's going to happen with respect to that wall and the fence, and some of it's going to have to be on Mr. Alexander's property. That wall runs approximately 1/3 of the common border between the houses. Elsewhere, I do believe you can see it on the plans. I do not have a copy of it in this book, but there's a note. And the note says, and I'm reading it verbatim, all vegetation along the property line is to be removed to allow clear ocean views. So that's along our property line. The note says all vegetation is to be removed. Now, go back and look at those lush pictures for a moment. I don't see how that's achieved, but we'll talk a little bit more about that when we take a look at what the code provisions that control it. And I do have the document that is the 1978 Coastal Construction Control Line, in case you have any questions about that, but that's just out of the public records in case there's questions. So now let's go to the code. So 66-144 describes what you have to do for a level 2 architectural site plan review. There are 12 different benchmarks. I know that's a lot, but I didn't write your code. There's 12 benchmarks. We have not heard any testimony on matters such as concurrency management or flood protection. They have not been analyzed by staff or the applicant. Subsection 9A states the site will be developed in a manner that will not impede the normal and orderly improvement of the surrounding property. That's your code. I didn't do it. The surrounding property is the Alexander House. The note that all vegetation will be removed in order to enhance the view of one home without regard to the privacy of another home is just contrary to 9A. Further, given a note such as this, subsection 9B states that the terrain and vegetation shall not be disturbed in a manner likely to increase significantly either wind or water erosion within an adjacent site. We're that adjacent site. Hasn't been demonstrated to us. We don't know if it's engineered for it. 9B hasn't been met. 9C goes directly to the issue of screening and buffering. The fence is going to have to be moved if it is to be consistent with the plans. The common border of dense foliage will have to be disturbed. And in order to carry out construction, work will have to be conducted on the Alexander property. No other way to get that fence that close. There has certainly been no regard for the maintenance of the southerly 8-foot wall. With the fence just a few inches from it, it will be impossible to paint and maintain. There's no discussion on the requirement that a neighbor be kept from undesirable views, lighting, or other adverse off-site effects. Again, these are protections in your code. I'm not even saying here that my client has that right. It's already baked in, built into your code. So there's no photometric plans. Mr. Perez-Azua will address the issues of character, design, architectural style, form, mass, and scale of the proposed elevations. And he will follow me to the microphone. Let's move on in your code. Subsection 12 says it all. Proposed plans shall not adversely affect the health, safety, or welfare of off-site occupants. It goes further to state that there is an affirmative duty on the proposer, on the applicant, to protect residential privacy, protect the Alexander House property value, and protect its use and enjoyment. Again, it's in your code. I'm not hammering the desk telling you must do it. Your code is telling you do it. A note saying that the vegetation will be removed to enhance ocean views of one property over another certainly violates Section 12. Further, I want to draw your attention to lot area. It's another tab. So just move back a little bit. We've gotten by the 12 requirements. And it's 70-67. This is interesting. This is in your code. Okay, lot size. It's easy to believe that lot size is just the lot, but there's an adjustment. And again, this is your exact words. You read 70-67B. All references to lot size or lot area in this chapter will have the meaning as effective lot area, which is defined as follows. Effective lot area shall mean the platted or recorded lot area, and then there is the word minus. Minus the following. And then under number 2, any lands east of the coastal construction line established in 1978. So, I know I kept you in a mystery for a bit, but let's go back to that survey. And that square box. The property east of the old construction control, coastal construction control line. That was the one set in 1978. That's what that document says. It was recorded in 1978. That block is approximately 26.47 feet according to surveyor by 100. That is 2,647 square feet. It was not subtracted from the lot size. Therefore, the lot for measuring the FAR is 37,486 square feet. From that, the floor area ratio has to be computed. 33% for the first 20,000, 20% for the remainder. That gives you 10,098 square feet. That is less than what they want to build, which is 10,239 square feet. At least that's in one note. Their plans are a little inconsistent. There's another place where it says 10,345 square feet, but either one of them is still in excess of 10,098. This is a mathematical calculation directly based on your code. Even if you aren't convinced by the other provisions in your code, you must, and you are compelled to deny the application right now. This is just a mistake. The effective lot area is not the whole lot. This is abundantly clear in your code. Then there's one last code provision, and you'll find it at the very back. That's 70-187. It talks about walls and fences. They have to be finished on both sides. Again, if you got a fence inches from a wall, how do we need that? Fences must be screened. I don't know how we get back in to screen the fence that is now presently screened by vegetation on both sides. Vinyl chain link fences must be concealed by plant material. I don't know how that happens again. Prohibited is a continuous solid exposed wall. Given the note in the plans about the removal of vegetation, the proximity of the proposed wall and fence, and the present condition of the vegetation between the properties, no thought has yet been given to compliance with your code on the southern border between these two houses. I'll come back up and give you a brief summary, but let me bring Mr. Perez Azua to the microphone. He'll comment a bit about the architectural style and compliance with your guidelines.
Good morning. For the record, Francisco Perez Azua, I'm an architect, and I've always admired the town's carefully drafted and highly respected code. At the end of the day, it is architecture, design, and the mature landscape what really makes this town unique, what enhances its history, and what makes it really a jewel along the coast. Beyond the code, as we drive around the town, we do see wonderful examples of architecture that has been created in the past decades following this wonderful code. The code is very specific about styles, and when I review this application, it's really unclear where the proposal stands. 1535 is a wonderful Gulfstream Bermuda home, and it appears that now it wants to be dressed up as Mediterranean. You know, maybe it works, but you need to follow the code in order to be able to pull it off. The Mediterranean revival, again, just looking at the code, is about barrel tile, and it has different characteristics. It's not just, hey, we'll paint it and we'll color it a different style. We'll change the color and we'll color a different style. Each style it's very specific about it. The massing, the architectural elements, each elegance is unique. The code talks about windows with small glass panes divided in muttons, which we don't see in the presentation, and that's supposed to occur on both the front and the side elevations. The windows lack formality. They are very random. I believe the proportion of the window openings are specific to each style, so that needs to be carefully considered when saying, oh, we're just going to switch this style. We see large blank walls without windows, which are a bit concerning, not only on the existing house, but also on the addition. I'm concerned about the rear elevation. Again, the existing house rear elevation was originally very carefully designed with arch windows that mirror the arches in the back. It looks very nice, and the proposed rear elevation looks just, you know, gets rid of all that, just adds glass, which I get it. You know, everybody wants the ocean views, but the ocean views are framed by the architecture. The way the elevation looks now, and I'm sure these are very talented guys, but they're not designing a house for Gulfstream. I believe that, you know, this has to be parkland, and not that there is anything wrong with parkland, but if you know what I mean, it's out of place. You know, it just doesn't belong in Gulfstream. I feel the project is well intentioned. You know, I get it. They want to modernize, but I'm sure it's an upgrade for the interior of the home, and it will refresh, you know, an older home. But as we read the code, I'm concerned that it ends up being a downgrade for the town in terms of its exterior architecture and in what your code is trying to accomplish. Regarding vegetation, I feel it's important to uphold the standard of respecting the existing natural vegetation. And Michael mentioned it, but I feel it's important that because it also is about design, and so I'll repeat it. And the proposal indicates removal of vegetation to allow ocean views. We don't live in islands, these are lots, and I believe that we have to live with what we have, and the vegetations actually frame the ocean views, should frame the ocean views. We don't get to just clear out it regardless of who is on our sides to just get more ocean views. We get what we purchase, and that's the ocean view, and it can be framed by vegetation, and that's what makes it wonderful. And I'm also very concerned about this massive 8-foot wall. The construction of that wall is going to devastate the root system of the existing vegetation. Is that really needed, that wall? What happens to the neighbor's fence that Michael's mentioned? Has that been considered? I see these large walls on 95. They're huge, they're ugly, but they need them, right? We need them there. They're collecting noise. But here, at some point, these harsh walls become intruders in the character of our homes, of our town. And I'm all for privacy, but perhaps privacy is better achieved by design, by lush vegetation, by the general setbacks that the code already calls for. So thank you. If you have any questions, I'm happy to.
Thank you, Mr. White.
Thank you very much for listening to our presentation. I'm sure you can see and that your code provides for basic protections. Your code's unique. Not many codes have this length of list of requirements in order to protect neighboring property owners. It's what makes Gulfstream unique, and I know you want to carry it out. Look, there could be explanations as to how it is that they've made calculations. I'm sure they can come back to the microphone to let you know. Regardless, there is a question, first of all, about how those calculations were derived based upon their own survey. And certainly from the presentation we've made, the plans have shown such little regard for the neighbor that that alone demonstrates that it's just contrary to the code. Nothing they've ever presented has ever said, how am I going to meet those code requirements for my neighbor? None of the presentation goes to that. Burden of proof's on the applicant. It seems to me under the circumstances, certainly something can be built there. Certainly something very nice can be built there. Francisco didn't say that there isn't an architecture that can't blend. All we need is an appropriate time, place, and space to discuss what your code really requires, and then we can move on with an application that meets all elements. Thank you very much. We're here to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I'd like to leave it open to the floor to respond for information.
Yes,
Would you
Yeah,
please come to
can
the
you
mic?
present yourself? And
Sure.
also, just to set the structure, basically
Absolutely.
your response, and then I'd like input from the staff and the board.
And I'm just gonna, I'm not gonna speak enough. I'm not aware of all the codes and of all calculations. I just would like to explain to everybody here, and particularly to the representatives of a neighbor, what our intention is. And I would like to also know exactly what it is we can do specifically that would make them feel more comfortable around our construction, our privacy. Our intent was to create more privacy than we currently have even. We are not trying to be on top of Mr. Alexander. We're not trying to peek into his backyard. We're a small family. We like our privacy, I think, just as much as he does. What concerns us a little bit right now is that all of the privacy hedging is on our side of the property. So something that the representatives failed to mention is that this chain link fence that starts maybe on Mr. Alexander's property really encroaches and is on our side. And the vegetation that is about, I wanna say a good 6 to 8 feet wide, not high, is from the property line into our property. So it creates this beautiful lush border, which we like, but it also takes away a lot of footage on our side, and there's nothing equivalent on the south side. So we're happy to work with Mr. Alexander on creating a better solution. We're approved for the wall, but we're open, maybe they would consider a fence that we can build together, build vegetation on both sides. But I thought it was a little bit one-sided to talk about our side of the vegetation without mentioning theirs. So, that's all I have to say.
Well, in regards to architectural style, I do have to disagree a bit with the previous statement because the original design had a lot of unproportioned windows to the arch openings. If you could take a look at the existing elevation, and there within your packet, you'll find that even on the rear elevation, none of the windows really matched. They were scattered all over the place. So what we found was, without disturbing the actual bones, the structure of the existing, was trying to alienate some of those elements and bring in new impact glass, because there are a lot of doors and windows on the residence that are in need of repair, salt and weather. So keeping budget, rather, in relative perspective, we replaced a lot of these features and also kept the archways as previously submitted, which we had squared everything off. We kept the existing relationship of the building and the archways in order to complement the style that we are proposing. Now, in regards to the Spanish tile, yes, I do agree, it is an S-type tile that you would find. But the house does have an existing flat tile roof, so we found that this was a perfect transition into a new generation of that Spanish Mediterranean. We're not opposed to going back to a barrel tile if it becomes an issue. We found that also, we brought in, we got rid of all of the coins and the soffits that were on the elevation. We cleaned all of that up and we created nice banding around. And you take a look at the addition, we carried that same characteristic along the front. Brought in a new material, which is the railing, which we're also proposing on the back end. So we're keeping consistent with our materials as previously approved. But we're more than willing to review some of these items if it becomes an issue to the neighbor or if it's something that conflicts with the code.
I have a couple of questions before I sort of hold the floor. Is there anything from the board? Can I go back a step? When we make an application, the neighbours are notified, they get a notification. Was there any discussion of the points you've raised, Mr. Weiser, from the neighbour in advance with the staff? Because they make a recommendation to the board, and obviously you've said that you'd like to work with the neighbour. And
Yes.
I just wondered if any discussion had taken place, the points you've raised, have they been discussed prior to this meeting? Is this the first time it's been brought to the attention of the staff?
So I was here the last.
Sebastian,
come to the microphone.
I'm going back to sort of nearly April when
This
the
is
staff.
suppressing your name for those.
Yeah.
My name is Sebastian Martinez. I represent Leslie Alexander. I work at 1200 North Federal Highway, Boca Raton, Florida.
Thank you.
So I was here for the last meeting when this was all proposed, and I was approached after the fact. It was given, I gave my contact information. I was told that we'd have some input on everything. We never received any.
Who did you give that to?
It was, it might have been one of your associates. I was approached in my car, so I was told that I would be contacted at some point. We would discuss everything. I never received any contact information. Really, Mr. Alexander would just like to have some input on everything.
And that
that's going
seems
on
evident
the wall.
from what you've proposed here. I mean, there's so many technical points here to be considered.
Correct.
A discussion around the table of plans, and it's all, thank you for presenting this pack, but in terms of data overload.
Chairman, if it might assist, if you request a postponement today, we'd be happy to meet with you in the interim.
No, I wouldn't actually like a postponement because we have our permits from Delray City and we started construction, and we also don't want to.
You started construction?
Well, we have the permits from the city.
This is a revision.
This is a revision.
is
No,
a new.
this is a
Wait.
new application. Okay, anyway,
Wait.
let's
Oh,
break
I'm
it,
so-
let's
I'm
break it, so
confused.
it's okay, let's break it into a couple of parts. First of all,
Yeah.
it's very clear that when you came along, the neighbour, basically tried to engage the neighbour
Yeah.
to move forward. You've expressed that you're willing to move forward
Yes.
and accommodate, when I say the technical points, but also the aesthetic points. Because it seems to fall into two parts, apart from encroachment on property lines and things like that, and that is something that would have to be resolved around the table, it strikes me. But this is a new application to address these points. There's an application for a permit. You know, it goes all the way through. So that's the first point that I wanted to see if it'd been. It's just, I don't want to say common sense isn't common, but you wish to engage with the neighbour wishes to engage with you.
My husband has met with Mr. Alexander about a month ago. He walked the property line with him, and they had a discussion about what we're potentially planning to do. Yes, Mr. Alexander said he didn't love the wall.
Right.
We have the approval for it. We haven't done anything about this or vegetation. We're thinking it through, but there was nothing that came back from Mr. Alexander on how we can collectively work together. So I'm happy to sit down again and maybe have the lawyers present to discuss what we can do on our south side in terms of privacy and the wall, if that's really what is important to them.
I think that's an important expression of intent on both sides.
Yeah.
However, now I'd like to address the point that's just been raised. Are you building is construction taking place?
Well, not any of this.
Okay.
No.
Okay. No, sorry, when you said
No,
you
I'm
started
sorry.
building.
No.
Yeah. Yeah, phew, don't worry, everyone's just, their heart rate's just stopped.
The permit that was issued was per the approved plans
Right.
already. This is just a revision to those that we're trying to clarify and put into revision.
Right. I have to make it very clear, this is a new application. You've got the permit, and the
Yes,
planning commission, this is a new application.
Yes.
The expression to move forward together and amicably, and not in a fluffy bunny world, but just as in, there's obviously concerns.
Yes.
You obviously have expressed a need, a desire to live, we're at that point where it
We'll
says
be
next to your
neighbors,
neighbour.
yeah.
What I would like to do now on that point is, the next part is have comment from the staff in terms of background to this case and discussion, because there's a couple of clear points about code, which I don't think are settled here.
I mean, and when you said it's information overload, that's exactly what it is. I mean, this is the first time we've seen this.
And that's what I was wondering if prior to this, because these are very technical considerations.
Correct. And so, but I do want to make clear, I mean, this application was approved initially with an enclosed stairwell. When the plans came in for permitting, the staff found that had changed, and that's when we said, no, that you need to go back to the ARPB. If you'll recall all of this. And so it went back, and it was denied at that point. And they need to correct me if I'm wrong, but the period of time to after the denial to appeal that passed. Correct. And so the applicant then approached the town again, and so at that point, the number of changes that they made to this, and the fact that the period of time for denial had passed, we considered this a new application. So that's
the basis of why you
that's the status of this application. It's a brand new application.
We're in agreement.
We're in agreement. So I know the two of you need to speak and have discussion, but we have another meeting in 4 weeks' time, give or take.
Yeah.
And I know not to postpone and things like that, but for the sake of 4 weeks, these are the significant technical issues, but also these are major considerations.
From the staff point of view, I mean, thank you for making, pointing out some of the detail in there, but again, as you could well imagine, I mean, we're just now hearing about the points that you made, and so the staff needs some time to.
And also, our remit is, minimum of this board is to meet the minimum standards of the design code, of our code. That's it, the minimum standards. There's obviously points you've raised which need to be discussed and examined. We can't, our history is we've been presented with things that we intrinsically might go, okay, that wouldn't be our choice, but it meets the minimum criteria of the code. if there are substantive points that need to be addressed,
Right.
I can't see how we can make a decision on the basis of the information that's been presented today. It would have been great, and great, Sarah, if after the discussion a month ago you'd have got together, we'd heard that, we could have addressed this, because as a level 2, it stays with this board. Yes, there's a point of appeal or whatever, but it stays with this board. That's the decision. It's a level 2. So it seems there needs to be discussion both between the neighbours and with the board, with the staff, to consider these very technical and well presented, by the way, points.
And then I'm a little confused because all the things that the new application covers here, like the trellis, the breezeway, the flat tile, the retaining wall, nothing of that seems to be addressed or concerned by you. Your concern is the vegetation and the wall.
And the design. There's a couple of points that if I
But nothing has changed in our design plans. That's not part of the design has been approved.
But when it comes to when an application goes in, and that's why I say we send letters out. Everyone gets a letter. And yes, these are the key points that you want motions on approval to. However, for example, was it concerning flood protection, etc. That's a concern. The 8-foot wall, yes, it's a concern. And I don't see that these points are the exclusive discussion points, because very clearly they're not the exclusive concerns. I think you need to have a conversation, and I'm not trying to tell you what to do, but if your husband met with a neighbour, fantastic.
I'm in contact with the property manager.
Wonderful.
They came on our property to remove some
space of 4
vegetation
weeks.
that bothers them. Yes, I understand. I'm happy to meet, but then should I get my own lawyer? I'm really a little bit confused of what is being asked of us.
Right.
And why we need to postpone certain things.
Because it's a total application and there are concerns from the neighbour. But, can I just say, what you choose to do in terms of lawyers or whatever, we can't advise you. I think this falls into 2 key parts. One, there is a technical code oversight and interpretation. And 2, there is a discussion to take place, a continuation, and you raised it very eloquently there. What is it that would make you comfortable with this application? That's an expression of intent. So,
and the staff would like to respond to the technical items that you pointed out.
Because they're very
there may be some explanation.
And we're absolutely not saying, that's it, forget it, we go back to prior to April. What we're saying is this has to have due process, and make sure that we don't have to revisit it and somebody doesn't come back and say, actually, that point on the code, your job is to enforce the minimum standards, and you didn't. And that's what we want to
I understand.
make sure.
So is this why we're responding it because you're going back to the code? Like, what if I would choose not to have a discussion? How would that impact this? Like, I'm just asking.
The board, if you say, I want to move forward, thank you very much for the presentation. Okay, there's a couple of scenarios. The board might have points, and we could, despite the recommendations from the staff, on the basis of the information they had at the time they made this recommendation, we might choose to say we don't approve it. However, we might turn around and say, yes, we'll approve it. At that point, it then goes to Mr. Weiser, and he might turn around and say, okay, we see why you've made the decision, but now we want the right to appeal it. And at that point, Trey, what happens then? And this is all ifs.
Yeah, I understand.
And these can all be avoided by, it seems.
So it sounds like we should get together and
that would be
try. I just really wish this would have happened when we met with Mr. Alexander a few weeks ago, because
we need to get hold
we
of the
could be
person you
here
gave your
now
card to.
agreeing and moving forward. Because the one thing I don't want to be this smoke and mirrors in a circus to delay our construction until Mr. Alexander leaves again for the season in May.
Right.
I don't have the money to carry a house for a year, because the construction could potentially bother my neighbor.
Right. So could we request?
And
as I say, it's not our remit at all. But the discussion takes place immediately, so as soon as possible. It's your call.
Absolutely.
As soon as possible, with whatever lawyers, etc. you need. But
with the goal to have an agreement so that you can be here in 30 days.
Yes.
Also,
is that Michael? You think that 30
I
days.
can't promise an agreement in advance, but I
Yeah.
know that they
No,
are
but
sincere in
sincere
their
efforts.
efforts.
If there are sincere
Great.
efforts,
Yes.
you've expressed sincere efforts, you've expressed a desire to resolve this.
I think we're all on the same page here.
Yes.
Okay, and that in turn, Greg, would you have time to address, Lisa, the main technical points of this that have been raised today, about 30 days?
Today, oh,
No,
yes.
no,
Yes.
yeah, okay. I think we're in agreement where we want to go with this.
Yeah.
Could I see a motion in terms of, Rita, is this postponed, or just send the application away again on the basis of the discussions that we've said have to take place?
We would want a motion to defer to the next meeting to address some additional information that would address the points brought up by Mr. Alexander's representative. So in the case that we are here in a month, staff is make sure that they have competent, substantial evidence to address all of the points in the code and make sure that you are on a firm basis to make a decision on this application.
Who's going to give that verbatim?
Could we say that again? I don't think it needs to be.
No, I'm joking.
I'd like to make a motion.
Yes, Bob.
To postpone application 18-13 for the property owners to meet, get together and discuss it, and hopefully be back here in 30 days
And there
with
will
a
be a
plan.
meeting next month before
Yes.
Christmas?
Yes, we
Great.
have a date already.
Rita,
somewhere.
can we said 27th?
Okay,
Okay,
so
but hopefully that.
Yeah, 27th.
27.
So that's the motion.
Yeah.
Rita, Tracy, second that.
And then I would have staff and the applicant address the points brought up by the neighbor's representative.
Right,
Exactly.
okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
Rita?
Mr. Doherty?
Yes.
Mr. Ruff?
Yes.
Mrs. Smith?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Murphy?
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
No, thank you, everybody.
See you in a month?
Right. We now move on with the rest of the meeting. With my agenda. Falls nicely into any additional items by staff.
Mr. Chairman, if you recall from the last meeting, the application for 3400 Polo, it was discussed that with the
Special
applicant,
exceptions.
about the special exceptions, they were to go back to the owners and talk about that. And they knew that we had a meeting today, but it was not heard from them, and so that's why they were not on.
Pretty simple discussion. In that case, any points from the board?
I'd like to bring up one point. This has been addressed by the commissioners, but I think it should be re-looked at. The amount of time that is taking place for certain construction within the Gulf Stream area, and that the town of Palm Beach has regulations as to how much time. I've discussed this with Greg and with a couple of houses that are being constructed, and he said that according to Palm Beach's rules, that they would fall within that purview. But I think that's something that really should be readdressed by the commission, because there are a lot of complaints about construction which is ongoing forever. And I think that the commission is the one that would take that up, correct?
Yes, or they could ask us
to
ARPB to look at it. But yes, just to remind everybody, this has been discussed probably a couple times at the commission level during one of their meetings. I think they actually asked the staff to kind of look into that.
We did, and that's when we came, or the commission rather came to the conclusion that this would only impact a very small amount of homes. Now, it certainly would address those 1 in 10 or 1 in 100 that do go on for a long period of time, and address that by imposing fines and whatnot. I don't think that we have, a ton of offenders historically over time. Typically, you have your resident that wants to get in and build their home quickly, enjoy the beauty of Gulf Stream. but we do have, again, some issues. So they did not go any further with it at that time. However, I did look at it, and you're right, Mr. Roach, Palm Beach does have an ordinance. It's based on the square footage of the home, and then there's a sliding scale of the number of months that you're sort of permitted based on the average time construction has taken historically in Palm Beach. So we could do a comparable study in Gulfstream with construction in the last 5 or however many years, and average that out based on square footage and have our own sliding scale with a fee to be paid for construction that goes over that.
Yeah, obviously, we can set.
And I'm not a regulation,
Right.
thrower, I just as soon have fewer regulations rather, but occasionally you run into a situation where somebody tends to abuse a situation, and if that's, even though it's only 5% or 2%, it makes life for the neighbors very difficult. And
Even
so
though you
you
have
have
that one.
Yeah, if you're next door to that one property.
yeah,
Anyway, so if my memory serves me correctly here, I think, Trey, I think looking at their code based on the square footage of this house, wasn't the time?
Once you step there, there's a lift.
3 years.
3 years, and it's still within that period.
Well,
oddly enough.
Actually, February 19th.
Okay, will be the end one.
Will be 3 years.
Okay.
Yeah, and I realize that they are ongoing and almost and ahead of schedule and things like
Well,
that.
the schedule that I talked to him about last week, they're
Yeah.
ahead of schedule, but
The whole thing.
again, that's not the previous 2.5 years. So.
Right.
So we did have a conversation with them, and as you can see now, they're landscaping in the front, and I think we can see light at the end of the tunnel for the outside of the house. They have landscaped in the back. The last thing that they're going to put in is the zoysia grass, and I can understand that. They don't want people driving on it, and they do have a motor court, a large motor court there that they'll be able to, all of the vehicles that are working inside will be able to park there. They've really been doing that for the most part, recently, and it's all covered in plywood, so they've got it all fixed up for them to do that. But they are putting landscaping in the front. I think that's really the last item that they needed to do in the front besides put the grass in.
So by February 2019, they have to have that done.
According to
Yeah,
Palm Beach
and it's-
standards.
as long as it's-
And the other thing that I talked to the construction manager was about the fencing. And so I said, we just wanted to get to the point where we can take that fencing down, and it looks like a normal house.
Yeah, right.
And so, literally, when I was out there, he was on the phone with that contractor.
Vendor.
The vendor for the fencing, and I think the goal was to have the fence down by Monday.
Great.
Okay.
Great, but it's something that I think that the commission should
Sure.
revisit, and, we'll see where we go from there, but just to prevent this from being ongoing.
So to get that Curtis's concern point to the commission meeting, do we have to make a motion?
No, I think we can have a
Okay, fine.
consensus.
It just could
That's
be
fine,
Would you like a
discussion.
motion for that? Can we have a motion, please, just so the record's clear?
Yeah, that's what I was asking.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Should we have a motion?
Yeah, we were going to make a
Okay,
motion.
so why don't we make a motion that the commission revisit the idea of a time length for the construction of a house based upon square footage and FAR regulations.
Sure.
I'll second it.
Go ahead.
Mr. Doherty.
Yep.
Mr. Roach.
Yes.
Mrs. Smith.
Yes.
Vice Chairman Murphy.
Yes.
And I suppose that we can just really put that under the town manager's.
Yes.
So we've had the items by the board, any items by staff? In that case, I bring this meeting to a